Hello and welcome to Module 3, Section T of the Better with Less course. Today we're covering storage areas. This, for many, is one of the most challenging parts of the decluttering journey, but it is so important. And in today's lesson, I'll be sharing some tips about how you can perform a storage audit, address common types of storage clutter and how you can get rid of it, and give you some strategies to help simplify these storage areas for good. Let's begin. Let's jump into one of the most important lessons of this course, and that is on storage areas. To begin a decluttering workflow, the most important tip and the first tip I'll provide is to make sure you've decluttered other parts of your home first. If you've been jumping around in the course materials and not going in order, I would highly recommend that you make sure you've taken care of the other sections first before getting into the storage clutter. And that's because our storage areas often contain a variety of items that pertain to many different parts of our homes and many different types of clutter that we have. Doing the other sections first is so important because it will not only help you build the foundational skills to be able to declutter more easily, but also you'll have a better understanding of what you have and what you need in these other spaces before looking at these storage areas, which could very well be the accumulation of many different types of clutter. So I can't emphasize that enough. It's also helpful then to audit your individual storage areas to see what the needs are in each space, and we'll walk through this, what questions to ask, on the next slide. You're going to also want to identify or create improved storage opportunities. If you find that storage areas are frustrating to you or stressing you out, or are just a big hot mess of so many different types of clutter, I would highly recommend thinking about not only how you can create new opportunities for storage, such as using hidden storage in your space, as well as figuring out systems for each of your storage areas that allows what you do keep there to be much more organized and easily accessible to you, and to identify what the key purpose is going to be, so every storage area is a purpose-driven space and not just a random hodgepodge of items. When determining where to start when focusing on storage areas, I definitely recommend going through one storage area at a time. And to figure this out, start by sorting through the higher traffic storage areas that you are using most regularly or visiting or viewing most regularly, or the areas in your space that cause the most frustration. So if you think about, when you open a certain closet or drawer or cabinet and you just are so irritated by the amount of clutter and the lack of ease of use when trying to get to something, those would be the areas you want to start with. But again, one storage area at a time is so important because if we try to do too much, we're going to be overwhelmed and it's not going to work effectively. Now, to audit our storage spaces, we do have to ask a few key questions. Do this once you are ready to work on one space. So don't try to do this for all the spaces all at once. Decide, okay, you know what? Today I'm going to work on my coat closet. Go through these questions when you're ready. First question, what are you currently storing in this space? We need to know exactly what's here. Of course, we don't need to come up with an itemized list, but in general, what are you storing in this space? Another key question to ask, what frustrates you the most with this storage area? You can also reflect about what the purpose of this storage area should be. What do you want this space to be used for primarily? And how can you optimize and improve this storage area? What is your goal for this space? This is where we think of the specific action steps we can take. And when we do that, I would recommend writing these down or keeping track of them just so you have a very clear itemized to-do list of this space only. Again, we are just doing this for one space at a time when you're going through these questions and then taking action right away. Now, when you take action, you're going to discover some different types of storage clutter. Now, it's very possible you don't have all of these types of clutter, or at least not all of the types in one storage space, but as I go through them, I want you to reflect about which types of storage clutter could be a problem in your space. First of all, mystery clutter. This is where you have boxes of items or some other container that you really don't know what's in there. It could be anything. With mystery clutter, it's so important we figure out what it is. Open up those boxes that you're unsure about. Half the time, you'll be able to let go of it right away because you didn't even realize you had something and didn't really feel a connection to it anymore or didn't think it was going to add value to your life. Another common type of storage clutter is homeless clutter. If you didn't know where to put it, you might have just put it in this storage space. However, is that truly the optimal place? Can we find a home for this clutter? And if we can't find a home for the clutter, can we let it go? There's also delayed decision clutter that happens in storage areas. Maybe we know we should get rid of it, but we haven't been able to yet. We've been putting it off. If you have clutter like this, I encourage you to reflect upon why you have delayed the decision. If your gut tells you to let go of it, what is holding you back? Why is there resistance to that action of letting it go? It also could be a situation of needing to put it to the test or try it out to see if it's worth keeping or if we really just have no interest in holding on to it or using it again. We also might have seasonal clutter in different storage areas where we only are using it for a certain time of year or certain purposes throughout the year. And with this, as you're going through it, of course, if it is something that brings a lot of value and joy that you love using in whatever that part of the year is, great, hold on to it. But if you realize that you're kind of going through the motions and not actually getting a lot of value out of it, but instead just using it because you have it or because it's what you've always done, maybe you could consider streamlining that. Because with those seasonal items, we really want to make sure it's worth it, like storing it all year or nearly all year to be able to use it for that certain situation or certain season. We have to make sure it's worth it. You might have storage clutter that's related to past phases of life, something that was relevant to you in the past but not anymore. Sometimes this is sentimental clutter, but also it's very possible we don't actually have strong attachment. We were just saving it just because, or just because it used to be relevant to us. And so I encourage you to go over that using either some of the sentimental clutter strategies or just reflecting about these items in general if they are still adding value to you. We might also have just in case items stored in our storage areas where we could probably let go of it, but we just have a little bit of uncertainty or fear that we might regret it if we do. When we encounter these just in case items, it's so important for us to get to the bottom of the situation. When are we actually going to use it? We need to get ourselves out of the if mentality and think about the when. For many just in case items, that day never comes. It can also be helpful to think about the worst case scenario. Let's say you did let it go. What is the worst possible thing that could happen if, the need for that item came up, even though it's a slim possibility? Some items, sure, maybe it would be more difficult or more expensive to replace. Maybe certain items are somewhat irreplaceable, but for many, it would not be a big hassle. If you let go of it, well, you'd be able to be resourceful and come up with a different use with something else that you already have. So let's really get to the bottom of that with those just-in-case items. A final type of storage clutter that is very common is either broken items or obsolete items that you really just, for whatever reason, didn't end up disposing of properly or throwing them away. And sometimes this comes from the fear of it's a larger item and we don't want to actually have to deal with it. It might not be super convenient. The other layer to this is that maybe we feel guilty about throwing away something, especially if it's a larger item. But the thing is, as we've discussed in previous lessons, at some point everything is going to be trash and everything will need to be disposed of. It's not a happy thought, but whether you yourself are dealing with it now or someone is dealing with it 5 years from now, 10 years from now, whenever, at some point it's going to have to be disposed of. So if it's truly broken or obsolete and you don't intend to repair it, let's get rid of it. Now that we've talked about different types of storage clutter you might experience in your space, let's go through some success strategies. Whenever you're going through a storage area, I recommend dividing it into sections. Sometimes these sections are sort of done for you in the case of having multiple shelves or multiple drawers, but other times it's not as clear, and so you can decide how you want to break up each space. It can also be helpful to start with the biggest items. Being able to let go of something that is a very large item that has a large volume or surface area in your space is such a huge victory, because getting rid of that one item opens up so much space and helps us feel like we're making really meaningful progress and can give us momentum. Of course, it's still important to get rid of the small things too. The last lesson talked about paper clutter after all, which is something that is much smaller in terms of volume or surface area. But if we focus on bigger items in our storage areas, that is going to be a great win for you, and you can cover a lot of ground just by making one decision. It also can help to remind yourself about the purpose of the storage area. Just like was mentioned a few slides ago, reflecting about the key purpose of that storage area can provide clarity and make it very clear to you without hesitation what belongs in that storage space and what doesn't. If you've got a linen closet, for instance, of course you decide what you choose to fit in that space, but if you determine that you want to use that space for extra bed linens, towels, and bathroom products, then you shouldn't have anything in that space that doesn't belong there. So really reflect about that purpose as you're deciding what stays and what goes. Adding on to that point, you could consider trying out a homeless clutter bin. Now, we've talked about various bins before, such as a donation bin or the section where you put aside items that you're going to come back to in 30 days to see if you missed them. The homeless clutter bin is for items that you know don't belong in a certain area. However, you don't have a place yet for them. They are technically homeless clutter. This can be a great short-term solution to remove some of these items from the storage area and then work through them as you go to figure out, number one, if you even need to keep them at all, and number two, if you do decide they are worth keeping, where is their home going to be? I'm also a big fan of using incentives, so plan out a reward for yourself after completing a tough project. If going through your personal closet or another space in your home is difficult, or you think it's going to be a time-consuming project, build in a meaningful reward to help motivate you to complete it and to keep you having the motivation to move forward when you tackle the next storage area. Of course, we are on a minimalist journey here, so maybe you focus on an experience or consumable item rather than a new physical item, but whatever is going to motivate you to be successful, I would recommend providing that in as a reward. And it can be very meaningful to work towards that, knowing there is something on the other side for you. It can also be helpful to invest in tools or organizers if that is beneficial for you and your space, and not a crutch. Sometimes people get the order wrong and they invest in these storage devices and organizers before they've decluttered rather than after. At its core, organized clutter is still clutter, but after we've gone through and decluttered, it is possible that organizational tools could be helpful in certain situations for the items we choose to keep. And it is possible that your space could be enhanced by choosing to invest in something like this, whether you purchase that secondhand, even dollar stores often will carry different organizers, as well as wherever you might like to purchase one or even repurpose one from another part of your home. You could consider those types of tools to make it a little easier to set up effective systems or identify key places where items belong. Finally, as we've mentioned many times in Better with Less, it's so important to focus on prevention. We don't want new items coming into a storage unit or storage space that don't align with the overall purpose of the space. That goes back into that purpose component. When you have a clear purpose for your storage space, you're not going to put something random there that doesn't belong. So let's make sure going forward, after we've put in all the work to make sure our storage spaces are decluttered and optimized and we know what we have and it's easy to access, we want to be very mindful of that before placing new items there that don't necessarily belong. The tools I've shared today can be helpful no matter what type of storage area you have. Just remember to be patient with yourself, take things one step at a time, and push through. You've got this. Happy decluttering, and I will see you in the next lesson.